Right, so most of you know me, but those who don't, my name is Ross. I do the otters on the Water of Leith specifically. I just wanted to start with this picture because this is 17 years ago. I was in a horrible place, agoraphobia, depression, couldn't leave the house. And then I found her, this is Squeaks, and she changed my life around. I ended up looking after her, working with her, and then living with her like 25 feet away. So it's really all because of her. I used to work for a wildlife charity. We had snowy owls and all sorts of creatures, but like she was just everything really. And then after a year and a half, she was quite elderly. She had various tumours, cancers. She passed away, and then I quit the same day, and kind of have spent the last maybe 17 years sort of as far down as Cornwall up to the north of Shetland and just everywhere looking for otters. So they basically mapped out the last 17 years, which sounds quite tiring, really. I'll start with the trail camera footage. So these are all taken in the last 2 years on the Water of Leith. The trail camera gives you that amazing insight of stuff. If you're there with the camera, maybe they're not acting as natural as they would be if they didn't know they're being filmed, and all this is just like the kind of private, intimate footage. It's kind of that great insight of what's happening when you're asleep at 2 o'clock in the morning, or it's snowed and rainy. It's kind of this is what I quite like seeing. Like this is that was a mother and cub from last year, who's the cub that's on the river at the moment. And that's her kind of rubbing her fur on this patch, which is where maybe a male's come through, another female, and it's kind of deposited there, so she'll get that scent of him on her as well when she's ready to breed. And that's the male who's just, you see, he's sort of bulkier than her with the shoulder blades. And checking out the camera, because they do a lot. My camera's been attacked by badgers twice this week. So. And this is a site that I kind of specially set it up, so it's already an area that comes off the river. It's kind of near the bridge, but then I put a rock there because it's like an obvious place for an otter to come and mark the territory, so that other otters, when they pass through, they'll be able to see that, read the signs. That's the cub you can hear calling as well. It's nice footage in here where the mum kind of grabs the youngster by the neck and throws it somersault into the water. It's kind of playful, but it's kind of cool. There's not a lot of messing about, but I mean, otters generally spend more time with the young than any other animal apart from kind of us. So they can spend up to 14 months with that cub, right up until the point where it's time for the cub to move on. But even that is kind of brutal because the cub's only ever known its mom, and it's quite harrowing watching it. No, this is the cub that's just about to be kicked out probably any day now, I'd imagine. So when they're in the water, the heads of otters, young otters, tend to be quite big, so they don't look that different in size. And when you get them together, you can kind of see like how much smaller the cub is than the mom.
How old is one? How old is she?
The cub was out. I think that's about. The cub had been out for 2 months at that point, so they don't come out of the holt until they're like 10 weeks old. And then they leave when they're roughly about a year old, maybe to 14 months, depending on how demanding they are, I guess, or how many cubs they have. So that cub's still squeaking, so they kind of grow out of that kind of needy. It's good fun though, I suppose. I quite like this one because you can actually see the steam rolling up from their body heat. I think that's 13th of November, so I'm guessing pretty cold. They sleep in holts, like under rocks or under like tree roots, that kind of thing. Say again, sorry. Say again.
More or less in the water.
Yeah. So then this is footage from the last sort of 15 years, just mainly on the rivers. Yeah, mainly in the water, but they roll around a lot like that, and they have to keep the fur intact as well, so, and poop. So this was taken just off the main bridge, so it's quite cool seeing them underwater because they almost move like a snake-like, like an eel. Completely transform their body. So this one is the dog otter, the male otter who patrols the territory. I think he's definitely got 2 breeding females in his little harem, maybe 3. He's quite a pain to see because he's not like the cub and the mama who you kind of know who he's going to be. He might control an area up to sort of 9 miles worth, and he doesn't stay in one halt. Every night he could do several halts across a 14-kilometre stretch. So yeah, obviously this is on the west coast. This isn't the Water of Leith. And they spend about a third of the day just grooming because that coat needs to be kept in immaculate condition. So you just see them rolling around and. And that's the cub constantly calling out for mum. And mum had abandoned her for like half an hour, I think. So that's last year's cub, something where we are now. So that one would have been born last summer. And then, so this is a mating ritual which I've never seen before, which I think went on for about 20 minutes. And the cub was kind of there and kind of watching it like awkwardly, I think. That cub knows it's going to get kicked out soon. The male does. The male travels. The male travels far, like 15 kilometres a night sometimes. I think females, if they've got really young cubs, they'll stick to a small area until the cub's slightly older, and then they'll move further and further afield. Right to the bottom. Like the male could wander from right to the bottom down right to the top and back again quite happily. I think I followed it for about 3 miles once and just kept going, and it wasn't stopping. It was running and pretty fast when they want to go. And that was going against the water, not with it. So, and the mating thing's quite an awkward thing because they do it in the water. There's not a lot known about it. Like it's not something like other animals that you can kind of witness it. It happens normally underwater in the cover of darkness. So yeah, I was quite chuffed to get it. Quite aggressive as well. And that's the cub just looking really confused. and I've edited in birdsong, because obviously normally you'd hear like the traffic, and I think there was a woman next to me that wouldn't shut up, so that's why you can constantly hear a wren and a robin going around.
I was thinking of that range, really.
It's nice.
All the three birds are one of them's a raven.
Yep, there's the wren again.
About this time of year,
Hmm?
is that about this time of year that they'll be meeting?
It's 3 weeks ago. Yeah, so then I start thinking they've made it at this point. Then you think of the gestation period, and then you think of when they'd emerge, and then I work out that maybe the 7th of September next year, you could expect, no, this year, sorry, you'd expect to see a cub out, that's how my brain works. But this is really interesting, because this is the adult, and this is the cub. See, the adult knows I'm there and is being wary. There's a road here, and she's not. You know, you can see how she is the adult. She's nervous, and that's how they live long. Whereas the cub just came up, ran up, did its stuff, and ran off again. That adult knows I'm there. It stays there, and even when it's doing a sprint now, she's still got her tail up. She's still staring at me, and yeah. Yeah.
What's the age span?
10 years in the wild is 10 years in the wild is very, very good, but it's you'd be lucky if you get to 5 or 6, really, to be honest.
Is this an ag park here?
Say again, sorry.
Number 18, is this in here in Saughton Park?
Yeah. So that's just to the, I guess, 100 metres up from the bridge. Yeah.
So see when you walk away, where do you go? How far up do you go?
Up, quite far, up as far as, there's like a male normally has three females that he breeds with. Normally one's got a cub, one's in cub, and one would be younger. So he would have a territory that would span, if you look at a table like right across, and in that area he'd have a female breeding, a female breeding, and a female breeding. So he controls a big area. So he travels through the night, sort of looking after his female otters.
Do they sleep at night time?
What?
Do they sleep during the night, or are they still?
They depends if they have cub. They're active at night more than the day, and they sleep a third of the day as well. So they spend a lot of time sleeping, but they have to eat like almost a third of their own body weight a day. So they have to feed a lot. So they're always kind of busy. I think even when they're sleeping, they're probably busy, and a lot of grooming as well. Yeah, dusk and dawn's the best. Like the hour before sunrise and maybe an hour afterwards is pretty good. But it can depend on the season, and if she's got young cubs, then their timescales can be thrown out, because like if you have like a toddler, a 2-year-old, you could be up all night doing feeds. So she will come out and do like quick fire feeds, back in again. She might bring the cub out for like 20 minutes and back in again, rather than being out for 4 hours like an adult. She would do it in sort of smaller stages. So then you can see them you could see them in the middle of the day. You could see them, any time. And Tom sees them quite early in the morning, so that's always a good time. Whereas the male, you're not really going to see the male through the day, because he's got no reason to be out in the day. He's pretty much strictly through the night, unless he's obviously interacting with females.
Can you feed them?
No. Hmm?
So we just let them fishing out somewhere.
Yeah, a lot of fish, other things, maybe the odd duckling, maybe rabbit, rat, frogs. They like frogs. But these guys, it's mainly fish, and they take a lot of small fish. It's very different from the west coast, because on the west coast of Scotland, they can go out, they could feed on big fish, and they don't have to feed as much. Whereas otters based on the river, they have to feed a lot more because the size of the fish, they have to take in a lot of little fish rather than sort of a big meal.
So the thing with seawater and...
Yeah. So ones that are on the west coast are reliant on the tide, so they're less reliant on the day, the sort of daylight. Whereas these ones are almost not strictly nocturnal, but they're still afraid of us. They don't need to come out in the day, so their food is there all the time anyway. And otters' senses are at their best at dawn and dusk and through the night, because obviously they rely on their whiskers to. So they're underwater, they don't need it to be day or night, but obviously night is quieter when we're not around, I guess.
Earlier tonight was someone fishing just where the boat is.
Right.
How
Yeah.
does that affect the...
I took a picture of him because it's illegal to be in the vicinity of an otter hole if you're knowing you're doing it. And I know that guy knows he does it because he's a fisherman. Fishermen, they know their wildlife. A lot of them, and I've spoken to him, he's very good with his otters. He knows them quite well, but it's still kind of breaking the law. But then, from what I've spoken to the Water Leaf about this, the trust. If you put up kind of signs saying, don't be here, it kind of then advertises that the otters are there. So it's quite a difficult one to kind of get your head around.
Will they just not come out at all when he's there?
They won't come out at all, no. But
Do you not need to permits against fishing?
I think you do. But he says I thought you couldn't fish within the park's kind of boundary because of being a public park. But there's a lot of fishermen that go and use that.
Would you recommend he can be sort of stopped getting a permit kind of thing as a way of deterring people from using it in that way?
Yeah.
I don't know.
What will he be catching there anyway? What
He just fly fishing, I think, doesn't he? He just fly fishing, so he's after trout, brown trout.
It's a bit OTT for the size of fish he's getting.
Yeah. I don't know. There's plenty of places he could go fishing, but he chooses there. So
It's just the water's very low at the moment anyway, so I just thought...
I don't know.
Coming ahead.
He didn't catch anything the other day. He was there for a couple of hours. I think these guys did come out later on, and they caught a lot more than he did. So I don't know. But they wouldn't come out at the same time, and they do. They are sensitive creatures. I think from what I can gather, they've been there ever since the flood defence was put in. It's like a purpose-built otter hole, but I mean, even they won't. They have tolerance, but not to that extreme. It's like kingfishers get disturbed very easily. If you say to people that kingfishers are protected by law to go to a nest site, it's kind of like, well, I'll do it anyway. But actually, over time, that if you disturb a bird once, twice, 3 times, and keep doing it, eventually that bird will just say, I'm off, and they won't be part of the park's kind of ecosystem. That's gone round again.
So do you think they might end up abandoning that whole thing?
I don't. It seems an increase in the fishermen. I think I spoke to one guy in the one day, and he was telling me about the otters still come out and all that sort of stuff. But otters aren't stupid, and where it is it's the deepest part of the Water of Leaf as well. They have underwater entrances, so they could potentially sneak out underneath him, but they wouldn't because they know he's there, and their sense of smell is amazing, so they'd know he was stood there. But he's normally gone by the time the other day he was gone, and then 20 minutes later they came out. I don't know what would happen. They have a few exits they can use to get out in and out of there, but it's difficult because if you can approach him and say about the permit thing, and hopefully he doesn't come again. But then I've seen different types of fishermen, I suppose. But I approached a guy, I think last year, that was down there, and it turned out he had no knowledge of being down there, and I kind of half had a go at him, and then it turns out he's now one of my best mates. So it's quite funny. Like once he understood that standing there was a problem.
But it's just the fact that you talk about that this guy knows what he's doing.
He knows what he's doing. Well, yeah, fishermen know the water better than most people do, and the way it works. And majority of them, they love things like kingfishers and otters. They wouldn't want to see them go. I don't think maybe sometimes they don't quite understand that. You think it's not disturbing them because they come out, but if you don't read the behaviour of the otter itself, the otter might not breed in that place. So. Yeah, wild. Well, fishermen or the otters. No.
No, they take their hand off.
Yeah, so yeah, so I was the only person that could go in with Squeaks, because Squeaks was like, otters are social animals, and they'll only take to like certain people. So that's why I became her main carer, because she would bite the crap out of anyone's ankles, like, and their bite is pretty bad. So that she kind of befriended me, and kind of I would like her in her little clan. And because she was rescued, she was only on her own. She's normally a group of 6 and 7. So, but no, I didn't kind of. No, I was still wary to a point. I would feed her fish, but I would be like, you know, it took me about a year to kind of put it on the palm of my hand and kind of trust that she's not going to take a, you know, because Terry Nutkin lost 2 of his fingers to otters, so they're not like, you know. Yeah.
Do they do anything specific to keep their teeth in good shape, or is it just, you know, the nature of the food they eat that keeps them?
I think it's the nature. Yeah, I think it's just the nature of what they're eating as well. They're in the water, they're eating a lot of fish. It probably gets wet. I know on the west coast, because of the salt intake, their teeth get worn down quickly. I think it's like they did a thing with killer whales. The way that killer whales feed, their teeth get worn down. They go from being sharp to worn down. Like if you had a lot, it's like drinking a lot of Coke, I suppose. Constantly, your teeth would naturally degrade. I'm going to hand you over to Tom Kelly, who's going to do a great talk on the wildlife of Water of Leith.
You haven't heard it yet.